So I was working for Miners Bank a little over 2 years when my boss came to me one day and told me that the local unit of the American Cancer Society was looking for volunteers to serve on their board of directors. Now, I don't want to give you a false impression. He really wasn't asking me if I wanted to serve on the board. See, it was generally understood in community banking in those days that officers of the bank would be involved in professional organizations as well as civic organizations in the community. So, in a way, I was being assigned to the board of the local unit of the Cancer Society. Now, I will tell you that most of my work on the board was in fundraising, and we did a lot of fundraising. We had 2 big banquets every year. We had the daffodil sales, and for a couple years, we had a celebration at Mardi Gras. And I will tell you that the year I was unit president, Debbie and I were the queen and king of the Mardi Gras, complete with costumes. So there's a visual for you. But there's one event that I will always remember. I don't remember it because of the profit we made or the number of people who attended. I remember it because of something that happened while the event was going on. At this particular event, I was assigned to the money table. No surprise there, right? The controller of the bank would be assigned to work at the money table. On this night, I wasn't alone at that money table. I had a partner. And my partner was the president of one of the other banks based in Pottsville. So most of the ticket sales for this thing were held in advance. So once we collected the money for the handful of tickets that were sold at the door, we knew we'd be handling about a dozen transactions as the night went on, with about 10 to 15 minutes or so between transactions. So those gaps between transactions gave us the opportunity for some conversation, and for me especially, a chance to pick his brain a little bit and see what I could learn from him as the night was going on. So it was during one of those conversations when a woman walked up to our table and asked a question. Now, even at my youthful age at the time, it was a question I could easily answer. So I started to answer it. And as I was speaking, the woman looked at me and said, "Why would I want you to answer this question when there's a bank president sitting here?" So my partner proceeded to answer the question, giving the same answer I was in the process of giving. After she walked away, I said to him, you gave her the same answer I was trying to give her. Now, I don't remember his exact response, but I remember him giving me one of those, some people are like that kind of smiles. And that incident has stuck with me over the years. It angered me, but it makes me wonder how many times I've been guilty of the same thing. And it makes me wonder how many times I've been guilty of missing the message because of my expectations of the messenger. And I was reminded of that incident as Becky Jo was reading the text, and also as I was reading the text ahead of time and reading some of the commentaries on the text, especially that Luke text. So let's go back to Luke chapter 1. Let's go back a chapter, and we know Gabriel appeared to Mary. She left Nazareth and went to stay with Elizabeth. Now, Elizabeth lived in the hill country with Zechariah a little bit outside of Bethlehem. And Joseph at the time was living in Bethlehem. So from Nazareth to Bethlehem is give or take 85 miles. The next we hear of Mary, she and Joseph have returned from Bethlehem to Nazareth. And now the census is decreed, and they got to head back from Nazareth to Bethlehem. And this time, Mary is very pregnant. And the text tells us when they arrive in Bethlehem, there's no room in the inn. Okay, so how many of us over the years have pictured Mary and Joseph going from hotel to hotel and hearing, "Sorry, no vacancy"? Yeah, okay, because that's what we think of when we hear "no room at the inn." Well, it's interesting, when you look at the Greek, the word translated as inn is kataluma, which refers to a guest room. So what the text is saying there is that there was no room in the guest room of the house. So Mary and Joseph wound up in the room in the house usually where the animals were stored, which is below the guest room. So when we think of where Jesus was born, this is what we think of, but in reality, it was probably a basement below a guest room where the animals were stored. Regardless of whether it was something like this or the basement where the animals were stored, Mary and Joseph are not given the best accommodations for delivering a baby. And Jesus is born and placed in a borrowed manger. Then the text says, an angel appeared to the shepherds watching their flocks by night. And the angel greets them the same way the angel greeted Zechariah and Mary in chapter 1. Do not be afraid. Now, you almost got to feel sorry for the angels. Here they are doing God's work and delivering this great news. And the first thing they have to do is say, do not be afraid. But in a way, I can relate to that. I was in the hospital the other night working, and I went out to the ED waiting area to get a family whose husband and father was brought in by ambulance. And I walked up to them, and I stuck out my hand to say hello, and they saw the word associate chaplain on my badge, and immediately their faces all went grim. Fortunately, it was not a situation where their faces needed to be grim. So I kind of relate to what the angel's going through here. Poor guy, he's trying to do a good thing, and people are afraid right away. But let's talk about the shepherds. You see, we romanticize this story today. I remember as a kid, we did a neighborhood Christmas pageant, and the shepherds wore their bathrobes and had dish towels tied around their heads. When our kids were young, the church had these really cute costumes the kids who played the shepherds wore. But when we romanticize the story, we miss what actually happened. See, these are the shepherds who watch the flocks by night. Shepherding is a dirty job. Nobody is a shepherd if they have any other options. Shepherds are not desirable company. They were the outcasts from polite society. You wouldn't find shepherds at the biblical era Lake Naomi Club or Pinecrest Social Club. Yet God sends the angel to the shepherds. It is the shepherds, the lowest of the low, who first hear the news of the birth of God's Son, a baby born to oppressed parents who they would find in a borrowed manger. And as I was reading these commentaries, I began to wonder, who would the shepherds be today? Who is it that is outcast and not wanted, that God would select to be God's messenger today? I wonder if the shepherds of today would be exploited day laborers like Cristobal, an undocumented Guatemalan immigrant working as a day laborer in Houston. Cristobal was hired by a contractor to replace a roof damaged by Hurricane Harvey, and the contractor refuses to pay him for the last 9 days of his work. Maybe it would be Guillermo Miranda, another undocumented day laborer. After Harvey, Guillermo worked every day in work pants, a t-shirt, and tennis shoes, surrounded by raw sewage as he cleaned homes. Or maybe it would be the workers I met in Guatemala, who despite working almost every day, are unable to break the cycle of poverty and oppression. The angel said, I am bringing good news of great joy for all the people. Did you hear that? All the people. No matter your race, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your gender identity, or your financial status. This is great news of great joy for all of us. So some of us are here tonight because someone pestered us to be here. This is good news of great joy. Some of us are here tonight even though we're angry with God because of something going on in our life. This is good news of great joy. Some of us are here tonight and life couldn't be better. This is good news of great joy. No matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, this is good news of great joy. So the angel tells the shepherds, go look for the child lying in a manger. So what do the shepherds do? They go. There's no coin flipping to see who stays behind to watch the sheep. They go. There's no, hey angel, can you give us the address? Can you give us an idea of where this house might be? They find the baby. They tell Mary and Joseph about the angel. And I have to wonder if Mary and Joseph chuckled when the shepherds described the angel to them, because they'd already seen that angel. So the couple, forced to stay in a room where the animals are stored, are visited by the outcasts of society. And Mary treasured what those shepherds told her in her heart. But there's another interesting verse in that text. After the shepherds told their story, verse 18 says, "And all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds told them." Now, this is one of those times where I wish Luke had provided a little more detail. Who are the all? And where did they come from? How many people are the all? Are the all the people whose doors the shepherds knocked on and said, "Hey, we're looking for the baby that was born tonight. Is it in your house?" As they traveled from house to house until they found Mary and Joseph with Jesus? No matter how many it is, though, they heard what the shepherds said, and they were amazed. So let's think about this. Whoever owned the house where Jesus was born, let the shepherds, the outcasts, and the least desirable in the society into the house so they could visit the newborn baby. And when the shepherds shared their story of good news of great joy, all were amazed. Like the world of the first century, we live in a world enamored by wealth, power, and military might. We live in a world where the lowly, like Cristobal and Guillermo and the Guatemalan workers, get trampled on far too often. And even these 2,000 years later, the Savior is born to us, and his birth is good news for all people. Jesus comes to bring peace on earth by reconciling us to God and to one another with the power of love that casts out fear. I'm going to say that again. Jesus comes to bring peace on earth by reconciling us to God and to one another with the power of love that casts out fear. The messengers are out there to share their story. Are we able to hear the message? Or are we missing the message because of our expectations of the messenger? Amen.